Please welcome with us to give us a great story, Mr. Amos Wekesa.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was also invited. I was asked to speak at this meeting in April. And I said yes and forgot. So my PA have extremely very efficient PA. I have an American PA. The reason why I have an American PA is because I want someone who understands the clients I'm looking for. And I also did not like school. So when I communicate my information to her and she writes, everyone thinks I'm such a brilliant guy. She received an email from us. And I was forced to get a PA by Simon Kaheru there, you know. Standing before you, of course, before I came, I asked my PA to call Anne to find out the dress code. And so they told me I needed to have either formal or semi-something. So I decided that I will tuck in. Because that's the best I can do. I have one suit, and I put on a suit once in a year. So you're just lucky that I did not come with my shorts. But that said, the last 1 month, or last 2 months, I've been having quite a lot of people, you know. I'm a Christian, and so people have been calling me and saying, Amos, we prayed, and what has been very clear is that you need to have a Thanksgiving. And so I've been thinking, I am not a party guy, even being here is, About 4 or 5 people have been telling me, Amos, it's time for you to do a Thanksgiving for what God has done for you in your life. And so coming to a Thanksgiving evening makes me, it reaffirms my interest in making this party in the village. It's not going to be this party of the city dwellers with ties and suits. No, just going to go with my guys in the village and enjoy it. But I'm very grateful for so many things. And I think when I give a bit of my life story, you will understand why I am very grateful to God, even just to stand before you here. In 1973, I was born in a village called Wakaka, in the border of Uganda and Kenya. It was a very difficult time. And I was born in extreme abject poverty. We were so poor that if my mother visited, we all prayed as she came back in the evening. Because what she covered herself as a Gomez, that Gomez was what we covered ourselves as kids. We were so poor by the age of 10. We were so poor that by the age of 10, I had not gone to school. When I started doing business, I think it's about for 5-6 years. Every time my mother looked at me, she could shed tears. It's only until 5 or 6 years ago that she opened up why she used to shed tears. When I was born, she was so poor that she contemplated killing me. So she planned to kill me on a Friday, and it was a Thursday. Not because she didn't like me, but because the conditions were extremely very difficult for her. She still cries up now when she sees me. And she said she went to sleep on Thursday night, and 6 people came in her dreams and said, you do not know who you want to kill. And that is how I survived. So I have every reason to be thankful. In 1983, I had not gone to school. An organization called Salvation Army comes to my village and looks for the top 2 poorest families to get 2 boys. Now, I was the only boy at home at the time out of the 6 girls, with 6 girls. Now, if we had been 2 boys, the chances would have been 50%. If we had been 5 boys, the chances would have been even lower. So they wanted 46 boys to look after from different parts of the country. But thank God I was from one of the top 2 poorest families. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stood here probably if I'd been in a fair family in that same village. They tell me, okay, we're going to the city. I never put on shoes. I've never seen light. And I still vividly remember the time I boarded the car for the first time in my life. We had to walk 15 kilometers to get the car that would take us to Mbali. When I sat in the car for the first time, I discovered that actually trees were running. Little did I know it was a car. That I still have that memory. We arrived Children's Home in Tororo, Salvation Army Children's Home in 1983. I was 10 years old, and I arrived in the evening. And there was light in the room, which was a dormitory. Long one. A smaller guy comes and touches the wall, and lights go off. It was no light, so the guy touches the wall, and light comes on, and he goes away. I wait for the guy to go out. I go and touch the same place, and light goes off. And I take off just in case they discover I'm the guy who was touched. At 10 years, I'm taken to a nursery school. I'm 11 years, I'm taken for interviews for primary one in Oguti Primary School in Tororo. The headmaster says, "You're too old." They took me to primary two. It was just too much for the guy. So I like school. For my primary, I did scouting, I did acting, I did sports, and some of the things that I've discovered that have been useful to my life. I go to secondary school, I'm in S1 at the age of 17. I remember when I arrived at school, a guy kicked me and said, "Where were you when you were studying?" I started deteriorating in my education. By the time I finished S6, I was in St. Peter's College for my A-levels, and I was the worst performer among all the leaders of that year, 1996. I was with your brother, Wanamama, I can tell you that story. I was written off by my schoolmates. No one wanted to talk to me, At the beginning of May 1996, I'm 23 years old, I'm not needed in the home, and I also know the abject poverty that I was born in. And that time is when I realized, I said, "God, you gave me a chance to go to school." They never gave us everything, but one thing they did, Salvation Army did, was to pay our school fees. I had a chance, but I wasted it. So I said, "God, I had a chance in my life, and I wasted it. Should you give me a second chance in life, I am going to work like crazy." 22nd May of the same month, a Canadian doctor from Tororo Hospital comes to our home and says, "Take that guy to do a certificate in tourism in Kampala." Meanwhile, I left Wakaka. Tororo was such a shock. Now I leave Tororo. I come to Kampala, 96. I don't want to tell you the story. It was a shock. I arrive Kampala. I do my certificate for 9 months. And I start looking for a first job. But that certificate I did so well because I'd committed myself to hard work. And I remember one time I did a test and I got 98%. Others I would get 100%. And one kid said, "You come from a poor background." I'm very, very open about where I came from. Because I believe that where I came from was not my responsibility. Where I'm going is purely my responsibility. This guy says, "Well, you come from a poor family. There's no one, you have no connection." I say, "You know what? I'm a son of the Most High God. I am going to walk office to office until I will get a job." I walked at least 200 offices, and I told them I was willing to do everything possible, anything that they gave me. And guess what? My first job was a sweeper in an office that was down in Sheraton here with Belex. I was earning 20,000 shillings a month. I was living in a slum called Chikubamutwe. My rent was 3,500. I don't know how many of you know that. As a young man, when I found people that I was in school with, a lot of them could dodge me because they just knew, this one is finished. I worked as an office messenger for a year. As a sweeper for a year. Then I looked for my second job. I became an office messenger with a company called Nile Safaris. Now my salary shot up. I started earning 35,000 shillings a month. But that's when I also discovered that I had relatives. They started coming from every corner. So I told them I thought I had no relatives, I worked for a year as a sweeper with Nile Safaris. And I remember recently I was writing, how many of you follow me on Facebook? I was writing about how I got my second job. And I wrote a whole story of how I got my second job. And the next day, my former boss, who was the owner of Nile Safaris, writes to me and said, you know one thing about you, Amos? You worked hard. And one of the roles that I had was to go out and send money I would go to meet tour guides in the field and give them money. I would go to the post office. Everyone knew me for working so fast. And my boss knew that I would deliver. And he said, Amos, if there's anything I can talk about you, is that you're so trusted with money. And I told him, you know what? I had a bigger dream. I was not about to steal small money. No. I left him. I looked for my third job. I became a tour guide. And that's when I discovered my gift. Tour guiding is like politics. Now, I started with camping safaris. So I was guiding Dutch people. 15 Dutch guys would arrive at the airport. They all are meeting for the first time. And we're doing camping safaris. So I put their tents. The first 2 days, they help you do the tents. After 3 days, they have paid. Then you start, we've traveled for 10 hours. I put the tents out. I cook for the guys. In the morning, I sit at the campfire until the last guy stopped smoking at 3 a.m. By 5 a.m., I was up, and I was making breakfast for the same guys. I remember one time, I was so drained, and I was being paid $1 a day. I was playing chess with one guy in Bwindi, and he said, Amos, one day, I'll come to Kampala, we'll come to Uganda, and people will know you. I looked at this man in the face, and I thought, I wish you knew my problems. In my heart. But he was a teacher. He came recently and said, Amos, I told you a few things. And he said, it's because I was a teacher, I could see your potential. I never guided one dissatisfied client. Even when I was earning $1 a day, I started discovering my gift. And one thing I've discovered in life, people rush for money, but the first thing you should run for is a skill. When you have achieved a skill, the second thing you look for is networks. I have been built by people. I have created networks. Michael here is one of them. Many of you guys give me business. And I was just so shocked today that, Croy was saying, man, we do your audits. I'll say, oh, all right. Mike was saying, we supply you internet. I started thinking, this is something I should thank God for. It's not something that I can take lightly. So I looked for my last job with a company called Afrique Voyage. And my salary there went out of order, It was 150,000 shillings a month. More relatives appeared. I saved up $200 and started my first company called Great Lake Safaris in a briefcase for 9 months. After 9 months, I got an office under a staircase on Rainbow Arcade. And one of the things that I just thank God for was one of the things that actually helped me grow. I guided a group. A lady came from World Bank in the US. She had been on a Lonely Planet and asked, I'm going to Uganda, who should be my guide? And, people said, we've been to Uganda. Dutch guy said, you go and look for Amos. She comes, I organize a trip, I give her a guide, and she goes to Queen Elizabeth National Park and comes back and is like, this is one of the best trips I've had in life. When I go back to the US, I have to do something. So I thought, this should be some emotional Muzungu things must help Africans. She went. She sends another group in May, and I give them a good guide. And that time, I was not interested in how much money I was making. These guys slept here at Sheraton, and I could not bring them in my office because we're below the staircase. One of the guys was so tall. I just imagine bringing him to my office to say thank you. I always met my clients at the beginning and also debriefed them. These guys enjoy their trip. One guy loved birds. He knew birds. He had a bird book. We had no bird book. We had no binoculars. We had nothing. But the guy I gave him knew about 700 different species of birds. The Ugandan guy. He would tell him this bird is a migrant, does this, and he cross-checks, and it was true. He comes back and says, Martin is the birdman of Uganda. I have never seen a guy that knows species of birds like this guy. I am going back to the US, and I must do something. There were 6 of them, but there was one who was very interested. In June, I contemplated closing my business because I've taken on my first office. Things were hard. 22nd November 2002, I get a phone call from the US. Remember me? My name is Tom Carter. I am an editor with Washington Times. I've written an article about Uganda, Herds Bypass Uganda. Such a beautiful country without tourists. Man, I started making money, to bought cars for the company, but I was still living in a slum. Let me tell you, there's nothing good about poverty. I tasted poverty. No one should tell you you're going to heaven because you're poor. I'm a testimony of poverty. I know it. So we grew. But of course, now, of course, I own Great Lake Safaris in Uganda and Rwanda. I also own Uganda lodges, 4 lodges in Uganda. I've just bought another lodge in Tanzania. We just entered marine tourism. I've just brought in Uganda's best cruise boat, MV Kazinga. I'm employing quite a lot of people. Set up a small office in New York now. I'm going to be in the US next week to bring guys to this country. But I also want to say I am so grateful to God that He made me Ugandan. I love my country. The last many years I've been flying, you can never find me on a plane without Uganda on my chest. Even my winter jackets are tailor-made to tell everybody I'm Ugandan. It's a country of great weather, great food. We have 53.9% of the population of the mountain gorillas. You've got 1,078 different species of birds. I know you Ugandans don't understand this. Because birds look like normal things. Maybe I give you it's just a simple thing. If you get America, get Canada, get Mexico, and Alaska combined, they have 994 different species of birds. America alone has got 778 different species of birds. Uganda has got 1,078 different species. They just found 12 new other species. Now, do you know how Uganda is such an important country? Even birds know that it's the best country to be in. When inland Europe is cold, the birds come towards the Mediterranean and they follow the Nile and end up in Lake Victoria during winter, bad time there. So I'm hoping that the ambassador comes back during the winter times. Now, I told you that Uganda has over 300 different species, more than America has. America, if you have your phones, if you Google, America makes over $100 billion from birding. So if we just said, we tell the world, we marketed ourselves, we would be a donor country just using birds alone. Uganda has averaged the best weather in the world. And you know why? Even when we are crossed by the equator, the lowest point in Uganda is 622 meters high. The highest point, 622 meters low. The highest point is 5,108 meters high. Now, Visa International does research every single year on the reasons why people travel from border to border. Do you know the number one reason? They are looking for good weather. So if we marketed this country, the only country that comes close to an average weather that we have is Ecuador, because we lie along the same. Culture. Harvard did research on the most diverse nation. Where you find 3 people sitting together, the highest is actually Uganda. Where are you from? What? Which part of Uganda are you from? Mbale, you? You? Uganda is the highest. That's good. I'm trying to give you an example. The lowest was South Korea. Everyone is the same. Now, that also is seen by what we do. If you go to Kenya, the Kalenjins jump, the Maasais jump, the Atesos jump. Come to Uganda. Find Msoga, he uses the West. Chiga hits the ground, my brother. Gisu dances. Teso jumps. You know what I'm talking about? That is Uganda for us. So I have every reason to be grateful. Every time I travel, like next week I'll be going to Malindi and then go to the US. I think about 2 things. I think about weather and I think about food. We've been blessed. So we have every reason to be thankful. Have a good evening.